Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are located and joining us from today. My name is Julie Haddix, and I'm Senior Director of Industry Solutions here at Cvent, and happy to welcome you to today's webinar on the Great Hybrid Debate. Before we get started, just a few quick housekeeping notes. For those who are not familiar with the Cvent Attendee Hub, we are going to be using the engagement panel today. So make sure you join the chat. If you have any questions you would like to ask us, we are going to be taking some Q&A live from our audience at the end of the session. You can input your Q&A into that Q&A button, that Q&A panel. And we're also going to be doing some polls. So when we launch those poll questions, be sure to hit that poll button on the right-hand side. And at the end of the session, before you leave, please don't forget to take the survey. So make sure you're using those engagement buttons, chat, Q&A, polls. We want to make sure we're using those today. And please do chat with us. Let us know where you're from. Watching all the conversation in the chat. We'll try to jump in as much as I can while speaking with you. But, you know, that's always a difficult piece. But hope to see you guys all making some connections and joining each other. So like I said, let's go ahead and get started. I am Julie Haddix, one of your presenters for today. I have been with Cvent now for about 15 years in our marketing department, and my experience with hybrid events both comes from working on our own messaging about what we're talking to the market about, but I actually am a huge part of the Cvent Connect planning team, and so plan our own hybrid event day in and day out in the midst of that right now. So we'll be talking to you today both from the perspective of what I'm seeing in the market in general, as I talk to our clients, and also through my own personal experience in planning Cvent Connect. I'm joined today by my colleague, Sean Simon. Sean, welcome.
Thanks, Julie. Thanks, Julie. As Julie said, I'm Sean Simon, Senior Director of Professional Services. I've been with Cvent in some form and fashion since 2012. My team is the one that typically is helping a lot of event planners, quite like yourselves, I'm sure, through these hybrid events, in-person events, or virtual events that we're doing. We're also big in helping with Connect and working closely with Julie and our other event planners.
Awesome. Thanks, Sean. So let's just do a quick flashback. About 18 months ago, virtual engagement is still at its peak, but we're starting to hear about the return to in-person, and the buzzword that we're all hearing is hybrid, hybrid, hybrid. The new talk about how hybrid is going to be the thing that gets us back to normal and back to in-person. That was last year. Was it the year of hybrid? I'm curious. So we're going to take our first poll question. I'm curious, did you as an attendee attend a hybrid event in the past year-ish? And we're going to also push live our second question at the same time. Did you or your organization plan a hybrid event in the past year? That first one's a yes or no on if you attended. Second one on did you plan one? I'm curious if it was yes, you planned one and it was a success. Yes, we planned one, maybe some mixed results. We planned to have a hybrid event, but it didn't happen, or we did not consider hybrid in 2021. So curious to see these results, Sean. I have some guesses on what we're going to see.
I feel like a couple of these might be a trick question, though, Julie.
Yeah, we'll see if people get those trick questions that we gave them there. Give everybody just another couple minutes here. All right, looks like we've got some results coming in. Ooh, I think we fell prey to our trap there, Sean. We're seeing that for those who said they attended a hybrid event, 68% yes, 32% no. And there's right there fell into our trap. Of those of you who said no, you did not attend the hybrid event. I don't have a poll for this, but feel free to admit to it in the chat. Did you watch the Super Bowl? Did you watch an awards ceremony? Do you watch daily talk shows? if you said no, but you actually have done any of those things, you did actually attend a hybrid event. All right. And to the second one, did you or your organization plan a hybrid event? Looks like pretty good number, about almost 50%, 48% said that yes, they planned one and it wasn't a success. Did have a couple responses that said yes, so-so results. So hopefully we can help you with that today. Few that planned one and it didn't happen, and good number that did not even consider hybrid in 2021. So great to see that coming in, and we're a little bit mixed bag all over the place, which is awesome. And hopefully today's webinar is going to help you as you think through hybrid. Because one of the things, and you've even started with our trick question, is that from Sean and my view, hybrid is not a one size fits all conversation. There is absolutely a spectrum of hybrid events, and hybrid also doesn't always make sense. So let's talk a little bit about, Sean, any other thoughts from you on those poll results, what we saw there?
No, I don't think they're surprising by any means. I think a lot of people don't consider some types of events hybrid just because we have this locked-in definition of what hybrid really means in the event industry that we're all used to. But I think hybrid events have been around for some time. It's how do we best utilize them for your particular audience.
Great. And I'm seeing some people saying in the chat that you thought about going hybrid, but it was too complicated. So again, we're hopefully in this hybrid debate going to help solve that problem for you and help you simplify it. So jumping into some slides here real quick, talked about that we see hybrid as not all hybrid events are created equal. And from that perspective, I look at hybrid, and Sean and I have talked about this. We look at hybrid on this spectrum that ranging from a fully virtual event down to a fully in-person event, and anything in between falls on that hybrid spectrum. You do not have to live stream all content. Maybe you're just live streaming keynotes. Maybe you are kind of going into this one event, two unique experiences where you have some virtual only content, some hybrid only content. I call that the Rolls Royce of hybrid, not what every event has to be. Maybe you have a hub and spoke where you actually have multiple in-person locations that are coming together, or you're leaning into that in-person and you're really doing an in-person event, but you're recording the content for post-event digital consumption, or maybe there's a rebroadcast in an in-person event followed by a separate virtual event. Whatever it is, I really want to make sure we're stepping out of any preconceived notions, because I think everybody has their own preconceived notion of what hybrid is. And hopefully today, expanding that thought and expanding the thinking of what hybrid is. So Sean, you're working with clients day in and day out. What are you seeing about hybrid with the clients that you're working with?
Yeah, I mean, look, the pendulum is swinging. We know that, right? When the pandemic happened, we all had to swing very to the extreme of virtual only. And then as we are able to come back into person safely in many areas, that pendulum is starting to swing back because we are just, craving human connection and that at the moment. So my guide to most customers is find a way to digitize the event. Don't go to this extreme all the time. Like you said, it doesn't have to be that Rolls Royce option at the very end of the spectrum there. It can be somewhere in between, but focus on summarizing all this as just what is your digital component? How are you using a digitization of the event to extend your reach, to increase engagement, something of that manner, rather than biting off too much to chew? Because I know a lot of times that, and we're seeing in the chat, that's been some of the fear of taking on a hybrid event.
Definitely, that has been. And so as we are thinking then about hybrid, what are you seeing as a success in hybrid events?
I think Morningstar, and the example you just brought up, is a great example of some of the success that's had in extending reach So they took what is typically their in-person event, obviously had it virtual at one point, and then it became a hybrid event. But look at just 800 first-time attendees. That's great for just extending reach, saying I took my event, I digitized it, and I was able to gain 800 people that would not have been at my event typically before. And then beyond that, they were able to take their engagement further with 42% increase in sessions. I'm a bit of a data nerd, so beyond any of this for myself, it's more just look at the data you can capture, look at the insights. And I'm sorry, Julie, I know I'm stealing one of your pillars by saying insights, but the insights that you can get off having a digitized event are incredible. And it allows you to take your event to the next level. And that's really where I kind of nerd out on all of this.
Absolutely. And I think that you really nailed it in that the two biggest outcomes that Morningstar had in this hybrid event is that extended reach and the extended and engagement. And that's really where hybrid makes the most sense is if those are your goals, and the two goals of your event is that extended reach and extended engagement. So before we go into some more slides and talk about some ways to get through some hybrid mass, I wanted to do one more poll. And thank you everybody in the chat. I know a lot of you have said you went virtual. I am curious, as you thought through everything in 2021, now let's shift to thinking about what are you doing for 2022. Are you still thinking about having another hybrid event this year? Maybe B, you're still considering yes or no on hybrid. C, we'll do a mix of virtual and in person this year, but not an actual hybrid event. Or D, our events will only have in-person elements. So take that third poll right now and give everybody a second to navigate over to that. While navigating, I did see a few people say that the hub was frozen. If anybody else can hear me, let me know if you're doing good. I don't think we're frozen. I think maybe just one issue, but please keep the chats coming to help everybody solve those technical issues. Thank you, everybody. Right, seeing the poll questions come in. While we do that, also read in your chat. So thank you. All right. Initial results, definitely seeing a shift towards actively planning an upcoming hybrid event. Still considering. All right. Good mix of you are definitely either planning or still considering. Love seeing that even some of you are thinking you're just going to do virtual and in person, but not an actual hybrid event. Excellent. Great mix here.
Curious in that, and maybe you guys can drop it in the chat. We kind of threw out those definitions and trying to shake off the old ones. If that changed anybody's answer actually in the poll, like they weren't thinking they were doing a hybrid event, but they're like, oh yeah, I actually have one, video on demand content or something there that changed my thought process, and that's why I'm answering differently. May not, but I'm just curious.
So it's a great call out. I've seen a couple of those chats coming in as well. And I think that goes back to the flavors and rethinking your definition of hybrid is, if you're recording and putting it on demand, that is a digital consumption, and therefore, in some people's definitions, a hybrid event. All right. So I think we can pretty fairly say about 50-ish% are actively planning for hybrid. Another 25% still debating in that debate group. Maybe today's content will help you decide one way or the other. Group definitely, I'm going to say another 20-ish% doing a mix of virtual and in-person events, but not necessarily a hybrid event. Again, going to push you to change, maybe change your thought process by the end of this conversation. And another 5% doing only in person. Congrats to you. Awesome. Okay, so For those of you who are doing hybrid, today is the great hybrid debate. And I think we're already seeing that debate come through. And what is the definition of hybrid? What do we consider hybrid? Should we or shouldn't we? We're going to lean into a little bit of the, so you're thinking about going hybrid or you are going hybrid. Hopefully we can give you some tips and advice to make that event successful. So when Sean and I kind of sit down and look at both Civic Connect, all of our customer events, we've really landed on 6 pillars of a successful hybrid event. The first of that is going to be marketing the right experience to the right audience. And I always start with audience when it comes to thinking about a hybrid event, because your audience is what should help you determine if hybrid is right for your event. Thinking through things like, where are they located? What is their appetite for being in person? What is their comfort level with virtual? And where is your event going to be located compared to where is your audience located? Really, when you start to think about your audience and how you would market to them and get them to your event, that should help you think about, is it the right event to host as hybrid? The second pillar of a successful hybrid event is going to be your venue. We all know that venue needs have now changed. And so making sure that you're thinking about those new needs and what is different about what you need at your venue to have both an in-person event in today's new events environment, as well as to host a hybrid event. And I'll give you some examples on that here in a second. The third pillar of a successful hybrid event is going to be the content. I have it as the third pillar, but it might be if not the first most important piece before audience, the second most important piece after audience to a successful hybrid event. When you think about hybrid, content is key. Content is what is going to drive what your hybrid strategy looks like. And we'll talk about that for sure as well. Community, building that connections. Community is what an event is about. And it is so important when you're doing a hybrid event that you make both audiences feel like they are part of the same experience. You definitely do not want to create an environment that feels like you planned a in-person event and you just so happen to have a camera for those virtual attendees to see some of what's going on. You want to make sure you're bringing that virtual audience into the event, engaging them, bringing them into the room, connecting them, making them feel like they are a thought about part of the event experience. Sponsors and exhibitors. Hybrid does give you that opportunity to diversify sponsor and exhibitor packages. Think through what that might mean to your organization and to your events. And Sean's favorite, insights. And how are you going to combine in-person insights with virtual insights to get that full picture of the return on your event? And really, how are you defining success of hybrid? Your success of an in-person event, those same success metrics don't carry over into hybrid. Same with your success metrics from virtual. Those same success metrics from a virtual event maybe don't apply to a hybrid event. You've got to figure out how to marry those two success metrics together for a successful hybrid event. So now we're going to jump through a few of these pillars real quick and give you guys some quick tips to hopefully help you be successful in planning a hybrid event. So the first thing, just some tips for you, is going back to that second pillar and the venue side of things. And, right now, I think anybody who's out there in the market knows that, we're kind of getting to the point that space is at a premium, rates are going up, especially because space is filled up as everybody has pushed out their contracts, but you need different space. So you definitely need to be able to maybe source and find new venues that you maybe didn't use before, because those venues that you're used to going to are already full. You also need the tools to diagram your space. We're still at a time that, maybe you want to still have some social distance seating for those people who are still tiptoeing back into in-person, but you have some people who are gung-ho, ready to network. And so some of your seating is going to be, a little bit closer together. That's really going to make those diagrams and that room set complicated. So having those seating and diagramming tools to help you figure that out is really important. A third piece about your on-site plan is, and this is actually for both your on-site and your virtual plan, is that AV. But you do need to think about the in-room camera placement, where are those cameras going to be to create optimal camera angles for your virtual attendees, but also where those cameras going to be that don't conflict with your in-person lines of sight. You really need to think through that. It's going to impact your setup, it's going to impact your seating layout, and it's really going to impact your virtual experience as well. And then contactless check-in. This is something that was absolutely taking off pre-pandemic, speeding it up, making it easier for your attendees to come in, get their name badges, get rid of lines. But now it's even more important to have that contactless check-in, make it easier for people to come in, get their name badges, and be able to limit those interactions, especially for those who are still maybe less comfortable with the return to in-person, but want to be at your event. So Sean, did you have any thoughts to add on some of these? Because I know, you're helping our clients set up these pieces every single day.
I think the big one I would add on to is number 3 there, master your AV plan. I want to make sure we're thinking about it beyond the logistics. For you as event planners, you got to find the right balance in your AV plan. So that means what rooms in my in-person event are going to be streamed, what rooms may just be recorded. Biting off more than you can chew and saying I'm streaming everything. One, from a budgetary side, that may be challenging, but also just from your time management side, making sure that you're in the right areas and those areas are all streaming correctly and you're able to troubleshoot. But like Julie mentioned, it's also the virtual side. So if you're going to have virtual only sessions, either during your event, pre or post, look at what can be done pre-recorded. A lot of times that takes a big chunk of work off your live event. And still gives the audience something to be able to consume during the maybe time frames that there's a break on site. So you're not forgetting about that audience while they're all eating lunch. You have maybe some content pre-recorded for them. So just find that balance that makes sense for your event rather than just focusing on the logistics.
Awesome. Thank you. Those are good thoughts. So let's go ahead and move into, I see lots of commentary. Ooh, can't talk today. Commentary on content in the chat, and content is so near and dear to my heart because that is what I do for Stephen Connect. And really, when you're thinking about your content, we're going to look at it right now through the lens of the production and consumption, because making sure that your content is engaging is key, both on-site and in virtual. And the first thing you need to think about is how are you going to capture that content? And I say that because, I also saw chatter about where speakers are wanting to be and, a hesitancy of some speakers to come on site right now, which absolutely does change the mix if you want to have a specific speaker. So you need to think about, is that content going to be captured from a home office? Is that content going to be captured from a studio? Is that content going to be captured from an in-person event stage? That's really the first thing to think about. Then with where that content is going to be captured is what is the design of that content. And these elements really do impact that AV budget, that AV plan, which I know I've seen some chatter about, the impact of hybrid on AV costs. But, it's important to remember that, yes, while AV costs may go up, and I think on average we've been seeing about 20% higher AV costs for hybrid events, just based on our numbers that we've seen for Stephen Connect, talking to some other clients in the industry. You do also factor in that return element of the increased engagement, of the increased reach, and does that actually drive a override of those increased costs? But that's that design, making sure that design is engaging, that it's going to look good on stage and in the room in person, but that it's also going to be well received on camera. You want to make sure, and the same goes for the design of somebody's home office. You see Sean and I today, and he and I present virtually quite often. And so we know our lighting setups and camera angles for when we're doing a virtual presentation. And I know both Sean and I have done more formal presentations in today's webinars that we change our setup just a little bit and maybe have some more studio lighting going. And so really working with your speakers virtually the same way you do in person on that design and setup. Then the third thing to think about is who is streaming? How is your content getting streamed out from wherever it is being captured? And last, how is that content being consumed? How are people actually consuming your content on a video or online event platform or in person, so that you're really thinking through that entire content production process from capture to consumption. And this is an area that I know Sean does every day in helping our customers with support. So Sean, what are some of the tips that you have for content support in a hybrid event?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, as you guys can see, I always say be proactive. I'd rather keep planning, and I know saying that to a bunch of event planners, you guys are already proactive in so many ways. But Julie called out the simple stuff, especially if your speakers at home, lightings, their camera, the sound that they have, what's in the background, making sure that those kind of initial specs are given to them, documented in a way that the speakers can understand, right? You can't make it super technical because we've all had those speakers come into, our particular meetings. Maybe they're not the most technical. Maybe they're the most tech savvy people you've had, but you have to have kind of all those specs documented for them to understand what they're going to do once they get here for the virtual event. For the remote speakers on site, we have a little bit more control, right? We can have the AV team kind of work with them, support them, check their lighting. But what we don't always remember when it comes to in-person versus the virtual, and kind of ties into our comms here, is we forget about the audience a little bit if your primary audience is one or the other. So if you're primarily an in-person event, don't forget about your virtual audience when it comes to being proactive, being in those communications. If you know there's a delay because the speaker is running late from another session or running down and got stuck in the elevator, whatever craziness can happen in an in-person event, make sure you know how you're communicating that. Is it a push notification within Attendee Hub, within an app? Is it an email? How are you kind of getting those comms out to both audiences so that one is still supported? And then lastly, don't forget, even though we've been kind of living this and breathing this for a while, some of your audience and some of your speakers, it's still new. You're still having to kind of get them through. It's a different tool that they're using, or they're not quite used to having to be even on site. Maybe they're haven't been on site for 2 years. What's the mobile app that you're using for that? Have a map in there to be able to find where they need to go. These are all things that you guys just need to rethink again, because we can't just dust off what we did in 2019 for our in-person events, and we can't continue our 2021 virtual plans like we were doing. You kind of have to shake it up a little bit.
I think that's such a great point, Sean. I see that tendency frequently to really lean into one audience or the other. A lot of planners are so excited to get back to in-person that they're so excited to plan their in-person event, but they know they need to do hybrid, but they accidentally ignore the virtual audience. And like you said, we can't just take our virtual event plans into a hybrid event, but you also can't just take your in-person event plans into a hybrid event. And you've got to really find that marriage of the two to create those engaging experiences on both sides.
Julie's the one that keeps us in check for Connect. So if you're attending virtually, she'll make sure you do not get forgotten.
I will be there with you virtually.
I know. She's an attendee and keeping us in check.
Yes. All right. So great thoughts on content support and content. What about speakers? And I know I love these tips. So take us through some of these, because I know I learned some of these from you.
Yeah. Well, I will say tech checks are absolutely key. The risk is so much higher when you don't get a tech check in with your speaker. And look, I know some of the C-suite side, it's difficult to wrangle them into a tech check. But if you can get even one of their admins or somebody to come in and help you on their setup, it's absolutely key. I will tell you, for this one, I broke the cardinal rule, my cardinal rule for speakers, which is when you're doing the tech check, make sure it's in the location you're going to be presenting. Our poor producer, Greg, I had to run into our physical office here in Austin due to an emergency. And I said, look, I'm not going to be in the space. This is going to be a different one. I promise we'll check in again and make sure that we're all good. And we absolutely did. We did a dry run before this to make sure we were kind of ready to rock and roll. But cannot stress tech checks enough. Also with the tech checks, if you have a moderator, any of those, look to see about the speaker themselves. Sometimes speakers are not comfortable being live on a webinar or within a session on there. Maybe they're a better speaker for a pre-record. So you can change those plans and shift things based on how you're seeing tech checks and dry runs go, because a lot of it is risk assessment during that time frame. If you have a speaker that maybe is having technical issues, let it be their internet connection or something else, you can then make a pivot and say, you know what, this would be a great session that we now need to pre-record because we know the risk is high. And that kind of rolls into our run a show as well. One thing on the run a show that I will say, and you guys have probably all done one for your larger sessions, especially even in person. There's something for your general session to kind of walk through things. Do it for the simple ones too. I will tell you it's very, very helpful for whoever's producing your content, even if it's the bare minimum. This is Julie and I, pretty simple conversation with you guys, right? We're just sitting down talking this out. We still had a basic run of show where we went through with our producer and said, okay, we're going to open up with a one shot of Julie, introduce herself, then go to Sean, 2-shot, and then the share and the 2-shot here that you're seeing now. These are all documented in advance. And actually our producer kind of builds those all out, means we're using Studio in this, and he can save those as what we call scenes across the board. But cannot stress enough that the run of show is equally important as the tech check, so you know what's going on. And then in the end, what makes any session great is engagement. Of course, content has to be good, which Julie already mentioned, but if nobody's engaging in that content, it doesn't matter, right? So that's why we're looking to use the chat, Q&A, polls to talk with everyone here and make this more of a discussion rather than us droning on, right? We all have the term of Zoom fatigue or, going through those kind of items. So just making sure that you have ways of just breaking that up a little bit for your virtual audience. And then, of course, drawing in your in-person audience as well.
Absolutely. And, one of the things that on that rehearse and the speaker tech checks, I think, especially in a hybrid event, it's important to do that, especially if you are having a virtual speaker piped into in-person. That's an element of the speaker tech check with a hybrid event that we're not all used to. I think we're all used to doing our tech checks for our virtual events. We're all used to doing our tech checks for our in-person events. But if you are having that virtual speaker streamed into an in-person session, make sure you plan for that tech check, not just for the speaker, because chances are if you have a speaker who's volunteered to pipe in, they're used to it. They've done it before. It's something you're used to. But to make sure you have that relationship with the on-site AV team, because that's a different group than they're used to working with. And you want to make sure that speaker knows the AV team and who will be there, who can they call, who can they talk to if they're having trouble, and having that direct relationship with the on-site AV crew. Also knowing what's it going to look like for them in the background. I've done a few virtual streams into in-person events and use different technology each time. So each venue also has its own way of doing things. Each AV team has its own way of doing things. So definitely, important to remember to do that tech check for your virtual presenters who are being piped into a hybrid in-person event as well.
I think that's a good call too, Julie, when you talk about, you went back to, different venues that you guys may all be going into, making sure that venue either has supported live streaming in the past, or that you're getting in there early enough to kind of run an end-to-end test on everything. It includes piping in those other speakers, right? Just because they can dial in doesn't mean they can get in while also you're streaming out. So making sure that you kind of do an end-to-end test has been key in the hybrid world. I can tell you from Connect, being the Caesars Forum was a little newer. By the time we got in there, we were in there months before, just helping and making sure that we were testing out those items, just because it hadn't been a streaming venue prior to that. Of course, once we got on site, did those tests again, and it's right around the corner. So I'm sure I'll be there in a few more weeks doing those exact same tests again.
Absolutely. Yep. That's a great call on the test. All right. So want to make sure we leave time for Q&A because we do have a bunch of questions coming in. So last piece that we really want to talk about is this one connected community and creating that community with hybrid event. When I think about hybrid, I always say we were doing hybrid pre-pandemic. It just wasn't this buzzword. And for the most part, when we were doing hybrid pre-pandemic, we would have a camera in the back of the room that was capturing the content being presented on stage and streaming it out to be consumed by a virtual audience. I even remember sitting in our CVent annual company-wide kickoff right before, it was February 2020. I'm there in person, and I think we were at that point pretty revolutionary because we actually even did some piping in of all of our remote offices waving to us. But after that, it was just a live stream to those virtual audiences. And, we've all elevated our virtual game, elevated our hybrid game. But the one thing you have to remember is you are creating a connected community, and you want to make sure everybody is a part of that community. And you can do that through the technology. And so you want to create that streamlined experience of whether you're attending in person or virtual, you're registering for the event, you're getting the marketing, and maybe even the same marketing about the event. When you're marketing your event, you're marketing one event. When somebody lands on your event webpage, they can make the decision to go virtual or go in person. And then they register down this, again, just from the same place into one choice. Once you get on site, you don't have to have all these elements. The examples we have here are definitely for probably a larger user conference or annual meeting type event, but you want to make sure you have those same elements for your audiences to engage in during the event. From they get into the event, they're attending sessions, they're going to a virtual event, but you're also creating those collaboration elements within the event as well. So when you're thinking about a hybrid event today, I see in the chat people asking what we're using. We're using the CVent Attendee Hub, which is a solution that can be used for all events, virtual and in person and hybrid, so that when somebody is wanting to have a session like this, let's say Sean was in person and I'm here virtually, it would be the same technology that is taking the polls, maybe an in-person attendee responding to the poll from their mobile phone, while a virtual attendee is sitting on a desktop. Same chat that could be engaged with between both audiences. Same Q&A so that a speaker can grab the questions from both the virtual audience and the in-person audience at the same time. Abilities to collaborate and gamify that are the same and similar across those both audiences, so that you're really bringing that virtual attendee into the event and making them feel just as much a part of it as that person sitting in the room is really important. And then, of course, post-event survey, but also that on-demand content. That's what I saw a lot in the chatter is on-demand content really create hybrid. And yes, on-demand content capture, that always-on engagement is so important, because no matter what, whether you're attending an event in person or virtually, you're not going to get to all of the content you want to see at that live time, whether it's live in person, live virtually. So having that content available for on-demand consumption really just extends the reach. You can drive new registrants into your event to consume content, or you can get the people who attended to watch more sessions. Whatever that is, you're extending the engagement with your event. And as Sean said, I'm not going into today to a whole lot of the insights piece. That's a whole nother session that I'd love to do with everybody, is insights from your event. But tracking all of this engagement metrics, tracking that increase in engagement throughout the life cycle of event is going to show you what content was really well received, what topics is everybody really interested in, and really give you a view of your audience and what they are most interested in over time. And I know, Sean, that's your favorite pillar of hybrid. So what else do you have to say about insights?
No, I just will say it's a wonderful side benefit of creating this connected community, right? These are all ways that help you make your event better and have people engage more on the content. But by having all these touch points, you are creating just a massive amount of data for yourself to be able to kind of look back at your event and understand what needs to be changed, or even in the moment, sometimes being able to shift on certain data points. And then I can't emphasize enough, I think, what Julie mentioned on the on-demand content. It's probably what we push the most for our customers, which is put it on demand. It's only going to help, right? People can sign up even later on. And we've seen that a lot of times we'll go do final reporting on an event and we'll come back and revisit that maybe a couple weeks later and see that we've actually increased watch time. We've increased additional registrants because people have kind of come back and revisited what was there on their own time. Because I don't know if you guys are all like me. I'm sure you are. We have too many meetings. We have too many emails. We have too many, if you're using Slacks or Teams or whatever, messages coming in. There's a lot of distractions. You're going to get pulled away. On-demand content still helps them engage.
Absolutely. And Sean, I think you actually just inadvertently very well transitioned us into Q&A, because there was a question. Is it possible to determine watch time during a virtual event within Cvent? And you did just subtly answer that. So I wanted to call that out of, yes, we can track that watch time, with on-demand content, the live engagement content as well. So yes, and that's a great transition, I think, into Q&A. And Sean, our number one voted question, if you're seeing this, is our trick question back from the beginning. How is the Super Bowl a hybrid event? This is actually one of my favorite questions, and one we don't think about. So do you want to take that, or
go for it, Julie. You got it.
Right.
I love this one.
Yeah, I do. So when you think about the Super Bowl and really award ceremonies, talk shows, they are an event that is curated for an in-person experience. When you think about these television shows, they are created for an in-person studio audience, the fans in the stands. You have all of the engagement that happens at that event, the sporting event itself, but they are also curated for the virtual audience. And you have the broadcasters who are doing the side by side, the sideline commentary, the entire halftime show that has the camera angles specifically for the home audience viewing. That is a hybrid event. It is a event that has a curated in-person experience and a curated virtual experience. And so, I say all the time, I also think about like the Miss USA pageant. Again, curated in-person experience that is, that pageant that is happening in person, curated virtual experience for the at home. And if you think about especially a hybrid event, but any virtual event from the lens of a television producer, it really helps you shift your mindset when it comes to virtual and hybrid and how you should be thinking. Hybrid, especially hybrid general sessions, especially, you want to create that curated experience that is really delivering the show in person and delivering the show at home. Anything to add to that, Sean?
No, I think it's just interesting when you look at sporting venues are probably the easiest ones to use, but you look at how they're up leveling now the experience for even the hybrid, right? It used to be just TV and in person. Now they typically all have apps. A lot of them have ways to chat and interact, or virtual games to play, or other stuff. They are also getting into the same game of how do I engage more with the audience that's not sitting right here in the seats, and kind of doing that. I know for myself, Austin finally got a pro team. We're a Austin Soccer Club, the Austin FC team, but we have Slack channels, we have an app, we have everything that's there. So it feels like I'm almost attending one of our events in a lot of cases. Absolutely.
All right. Next question that we have is, do you see pushback from speakers about digitizing events?
I'll take that one. I don't think we see a ton of pushback from speakers about digitizing. I think the pushback that you get is maybe the extra time commit. I think that's probably the biggest one that we get. So, doing that tech check, maybe doing that dry run to try to make sure that there's success in there. Sometimes there's a comfort level with that if it's a non-technical speaker. That may be why they're pushing back. But look, there's a lot of different ways to kind of bring them into the event still. So it's talking them through, either that pre-record option or maybe just not using an up-leveled tool like Cvent Studio, maybe using something more simplistic like Zoom, where it kind of can help with lower connections and lower bandwidth. And maybe they're more comfortable with that already because they've probably been using that for their company or other meetings that they've been on. So typically not pushback on the fact that you're digitizing, more pushback on the, time commit, I think, on that.
Yep. And I'll say from, I work with all of our speakers for Cvent Connect, and we do have a handful of speakers that have asked us about our recording and policies and how that recording is going to be used. Typically, if they are able, if their company allows them to speak in person, they're able to get that approval for speaking to have that session recorded and available on demand, simply because it is still within an enclosed environment. For Cvent Connect, especially, we aren't putting the recordings of all of our sessions just out there publicly. You still have to register and come into the event. I have had a handful of speakers who you are not able to get that approval to have their content recorded and available for post-event consumption. And, again, it goes back to your decision on should that speaker then be a part of your event. Is that the right partnership and the right marriage? This is a two-way street. I like to say, as the event organizer, you do have some things that you are trying to accomplish with your event. And if one of your goals is to digitize the content and the speaker is not comfortable with that, you have to make the choice on, is that the speaker the right speaker for your event? And hopefully you can find another SME to take that place if that marriage can't work between the two. All right, next question with the most upvotes. Do groups usually charge those attending virtually more, less, or the same as those attending in person? This is one I can take from our side of what we're even thinking about internally. And Sean, I'd love to know what you're hearing from our customers as well. When you look at, and this is publicly available, so you look at what we've decided for our cost structure for Cvent Connect, we do have 3 different tiers available in that cost structure. The first is the in-person pricing, which is the most expensive. And that is because there are legitimate hard costs that are higher with an in-person experience, with the F&B, the space, the AV, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody knows and everybody is fully aware of how to do your cost structure for your in-person event. When it comes to the virtual experience, I think what we saw was an immediate reflex that virtual is completely free. The costs are less. So let's make this available free. For Cvent Connect, we do have a free virtual offering, but we do also have a premium virtual offering that we are charging. And the difference between that free virtual offering versus the premium offering is in some of the networking, as well as some of the keynote speakers that you get access to. So you get access to some of our celebrity keynotes only through that premium offering, because again, there is a cost to us to bring those celebrity keynotes to our audience. And we do think there is a premium on some of the networking that we provide, that we want to make that networking available to those attendees who have decided to be truly engaged in our virtual experience. So that's what we've decided. This is the second year of Cvent Connect Hybrid in this elevated hybrid experience model. We used that model last year from our pricing structure. We've continued it this year. So far, pretty good feedback and registration rates in all 3 experiences. So we'll see. We'll let you know in a month and a half-ish as we do the post-event ROI on if we will be continuing with that model for a 3rd year.
And I think it has been interesting to see, at least when we're helping customers. It's been a transition. Like Julie, you mentioned, like it was free at one point. A lot of customers were going the free route, just trying to get their hands on how to handle a virtual event, and just making sure that they could produce a high quality event. And then some started to charge for that. Some started to go back into in-person, but there was still concern during that time period. It was probably, early fall of last year when some started to return to in-person events. And we started seeing customers at that point charge the same fee for a virtual and an in-person, but make the in-person probably lower than it was originally, to try to bring some balance to that. And also to bring balance and probably sanity to their own lives if they had to transition back to a virtual only event. It wasn't different fees and, having to manage that. It was able to shift people a little easier to that. And then I think we're seeing more now kind of that shift back to traditional in-person pricing with the tiered support that you were kind of talking through with Connect.
Awesome, thanks. All right, so we have a few tech questions here. So one question, any recommendation for what technology, website, app to use for doing something like a poll with both the virtual audience and the in-person audience? Well, I have to make a plug for a Cvent Attendee Hub that is technology, website, and mobile app specifically built for engaging your attendees virtually and in person. The great part about what we've built with the Cvent Attendee Hub, yes, we launched it during the world of virtual, but it was actually always built on our mobile application platform. We were actually in the midst of updating the Cvent mobile app when the pandemic hit, and we were able to take that foundation of technology to build out the Attendee Hub. But now it is the best of both worlds. It is an desktop app for online virtual engagement, as well as a mobile app for in-person engagement. So that is my recommendation to you, the Cvent Attendee Hub. Another question, this one's to you, Sean, that we did have piggybacking off Cvent Attendee Hub is, does Cvent provide the producers to run the show?
Yeah, we do have that option. That is my team. So perfect question for myself. But yes, so we have project managers that can step in and help you run from all the way from the start of your project, if you have no registration site, all the way to the end. And we can also come in just for the virtual pieces as well and make sure everything's set up correctly, have producers there. Or if you're maybe doing something a little bit more simple with Zoom, just have somebody there from a technical support to help your speakers kind of through that. So we try to thread all the different needles that are out there. But if you have questions, I would strongly encourage you to reach out to your account manager if you have one, or out this event if you're just coming on board.
Awesome. All right. I am going to combine these next two questions because they kind of piggyback off of each other. So one I'm seeing in the Q&A, what are some of the biggest differences in preparing for Cvent Connect as a hybrid event as compared to an in-person event? And that pairs really well with a comment we had in chat about how do you encourage more in-person attendance and get away from people saving money or employers not approving that in-person attendance when there is a virtual option. So do you want to take, Sean, just from your side, how you prepare differently, and then I'll take the second half and how I look at it differently since I do content and marketing on Connect.
Yeah, I mean, typically, if you want to flash back to Connect pre-pandemic, our team was primarily involved in the on-site technology and just making sure that the check-in stations were going to print a badge, the badges were going to come out, all the access control was set up, all the RFID for being able to kind of get data insights around the venue were all ready to go. Definitely took on new legs when we went to virtual, and also when we went to hybrid on that, where you kind of heard me say before, it was testing. We work very closely with our AV partner for Connect to make sure that we have, say, the right encoders on site, make sure we have live captioning available. Looking through kind of all these different areas is the bigger change. I think it's just more logistics, I think, pre-event when it comes to testing, rather than a lot of times, a lot of that testing and the logistics was once you got on site. So I'd say the bigger shift is just more pre-event hours from your project manager or whomever your main contact is.
Awesome. All right. So from our side, and I sit within the marketing team, very close to our planners and, working with them daily. I would say the biggest shift, there are two really big shifts that we've seen in our planning process. The first is in just how we plan the agenda. I go back to my content is king, content is everything. And that is really thinking about what are the key messages that we want to get across at the event. And we start with those, what are our key messages? And we really think about how we're going to deliver those key messages in the general session. And that's really what starts our general session, because we know that general session is where we will have the most eyes, the most attendance, both in person and virtually. I mean, think about even pre-pandemic, any event, your general sessions are your big messages. So, that hasn't really changed. But then what we have changed is then how we do breakouts. And we have introduced the concept of, we're calling it our stream stage, which is almost a mini general session. And that stream stage is where we are then doing any of our breakout sessions that are also being simultaneously live streamed. And then we have our in-person to on-demand sessions. And in those in-person rooms, we're capturing and recording all the majority of that content, save for a handful of sessions that we're not going to be recording, some of our trainings and things like that. So that's kind of the first thing that we really think through is what is the content that we want on general session? What is the content we want on live stream stage? What is the content that we want available in person to on demand? And then what is the content that we're just going to have available for the in-person audience only? So that's kind of our first big thing. And that then is what helps us plan our agenda. The second change I would say as we've shifted is how we market the event. We definitely, have a thoughtful timeline in our marketing of how marketing primarily the in-person event. And then about a month out, actually right this week, we're making the shift to primarily marketing the virtual piece of the event. And so Heather, to your comment in the chat, one of the things that we've really been doing to encourage in-person attendance is, for those people that we know it's going to be incredibly valuable for them to attend in person, we do have incentives that we've provided to our sales team. Each of our sales teams has a certain number of free passes that they can give away. And for those of you who have not registered but want to register for Event Connect but have been having budget struggles, I'm going to sneakily give this one away to you. Go talk to your sales rep. They have some free passes they can give out to help with that budget objection, especially for those people who we know need to be there in person, that need that in-person training that's not going to be happening virtually, who need to shake hands with our executives that cannot happen virtually. Those are the things you can do to enable getting some people to attend in person. And then the second thing is really thinking about your event location and prioritizing the people who are closer. Because right now there are still some people who are hesitant to travel. I'm going to raise my hand. I have young children, still on the slightly more hesitant to travel side of things, and I love that I'm able to continue to attend events virtually because I love attending all of my industry events. And so I'm really in that love of hybrid space. That's why I love talking on these webinars, love this topic, because I cannot wait to get back to in-person. But I also do love that virtual option. And so Heather, I think it's really understanding your audience, knowing the people that you want to have there in person, and doing that targeted one-to-one outreach to figure out what you can do to get them there. That's really going to help you. So those are just some of the things I would put out there. And I know I'm seeing this chat come in, and I wish I could talk and answer all of this and read all at the same time. It's a skill I'm still learning as a moderator.
You're a better multitasker than me already. So
we are. I'm also looking at the clock and knowing we are right on time. And I love that this conversation is continuing. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it, but with the encouragement to absolutely reach out over LinkedIn. Make sure you are registered for Event Connect, virtually or in person. If you're registered virtually, please hit me up. Engage with me in Attendee Hub. I will be there. We have a number of hybrid sessions, one that will be live streamed, one that will be in the in-person to on-demand section. So if this was a conversation you really liked, absolutely make sure you're tuning in to Event Connect. And thank you all so much for joining us today. Can't believe how long we went. Sean and I thought we were going to be 45 minutes, and we went the full hour. So thank you for the engagement, and reach out if you have any more questions.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.